standards-based electronic bill of lading. Well, joining us today to speak about that important initiative, Thomas Bagger, CEO of the Digital Container Shipping Association. Thomas, it's great to see you. Welcome.
Thank you, Russell. Thanks for having me.
Thomas, for the benefit of anybody who's not entirely familiar with the Digital Container Shipping Association, walk us through for just a moment or two just what the DCSA is all about. What is its mission?
So our mission is to help digitalize container shipping on behalf of our members. So our members count 9 of the 10 largest container shipping lines, and we are their conduit to help them digitalize and provide an interoperable layer of data.
All right, well, now you mentioned these member lines, these carrier members of DCSA, and in fact, it turns out that all of them have committed themselves to implementing the standards-based electronic bill of lading, or EBLs, by 2030. Now that's only 6 years or so away. Talk to us about this initiative. It's a very important one of the DCSA. How's it going? How is it coming along? What do you say?
Yeah, so first of all, what we call digital trade is all about removing the barriers that we see today. So today, international trade is complicated. It's complicated between different jurisdictions. It's complicated because of customs. It's complicated because of documentation, trade financing, and many other reasons. So
hasn't that always been the case, though?
It has always been the case.
How is it worse now, or is it?
I wouldn't say it's worse now than it has been, but it is the quantities with which we ship, of course, has magnified the problem. And in the 21st century, we certainly believe the trade ought to be digital. Mm-hmm. And so in about a year ago, actually in February of 2023, we had a discussion with the carriers about what is our role in removing barriers to trade. And that is, of course, the electronic bill of lading. That led to the statement.
So clearly it is a marquee initiative, if you will, of the organization and of these carrier members. What's the status of things? Where are we in the pipeline, so to speak?
So we ended last year, 2023, with 3.8% of bills of lading being electronic. That was up from 2.1% the year before and 1.2% the year before that at the end of 2022. So it's moving in the right direction. However, it is a long game, and it is something that requires regulatory enablement. So we are extremely pleased to see that the United Kingdom, as the first of the G7 countries, actually implemented the legislation to allow for the electronic transfer of documents.
Well, now, we just stated a moment ago that we're only about 6 years away from the date that you hope to be 100% vested in this, and yet the percentage at this point is quite low.
Yes.
Does that signal to you that there is less than a significant or real push toward digitization? What does that tell you?
Well, it tells me that they're going at different paces, first of all. Certainly the members are. MSC, as the world's largest container shipping line, they have more than 10% of electronic bills of lading at this stage. And there are others that have not really started and embarked on that journey. It is also a matter of how their process landscapes look. And the business case between the carriers will be different. Mm-hmm. As an example, you have carriers that print the bill of lading at the origin and then air freight it. You also have carriers that print at destination and don't air freight. So what we see is where the business case is the largest, they're moving the fastest.
We can certainly see the efficiency and the cost reduction, if that were all digitized from one end to the other. Next steps, what do you see as the next steps in this process?
So we work with a lot of let's say, international organizations, like the World Trade Organization as an example. We work with a lot of governments, including the government here in the US, to try and say, how can we push legislation? So that's, of course, one stream. That's regulatory enablement that needs to take place. A second step that we need to take is to ensure that there's interoperability. So you will know that the bill of lading has 3 functions. One is that it is a receipt of the cargo as you hand in the cargo. It is the terms and condition of carriage, and it's also a negotiable document. And so there are challenges with technology in terms of would you move one piece of paper that is actually the title of ownership from one place to another if it is digital and don't retain two copies. And so there's a lot of technical interoperability, legal interoperability that we're working on at the moment.
Now, slightly different question here. Clearly, in the container shipping industry, there are challenges and there are the occasional disruptions. We're certainly seeing something like that going on in the Red Sea these days, and we've seen that, time and again, in past. The role of the DCSA in terms of dealing with helping its carrier members deal with that sort of thing. How do you see that?
Let's stay with the bill of lading example. What we saw during COVID was that because planes stopped flying, bill of ladings stopped being transported around the world, and that means that containers couldn't be gated out, cargo couldn't be gated out. That meant congestions, and it meant at certain stages that there were ports that could not allow more cargo to come in. So you can say digitalization is as we see it, it's a means to making the supply chains more efficient. It's a means to reducing the shocks that we see when shocks occur. And it's a means of also making the industry more sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just conclude with that question then, because let's amplify on that. The role that you see of DCSA when it comes to improving the sustainability of the global supply chain, how would you characterize that?
So nobody would argue that digital provides the ability as we drive our cars to go around where there's congestions. The digital exchange of information between ports and container carriers, feeder operators, service providers at the ports is vital to reducing the carbon footprint and the greenhouse gas emissions that we see out there. So, of course, it will still be an industry that has large emissions until we see a transition to green fuels. Mm-hmm. But there is something we can do here and now by deploying digital tools and reducing carbon footprint.
Well, clearly a very, very important initiative toward achieving those goals, and DCSA is doing a great deal of work in that area. Thomas, thank you so much for finding the time to speak with us today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Russell.
Thomas Bagger with the Digital Container Shipping Association, talking with us today about standards-based electronic bills of lading. Thanks for watching.